Me having a channel primarily focused on studying, a question I get asked a lot is, how many hours do you study? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going through how many hours you should be studying, how many hours I study, and do hours even really matter? Anyway, here are the timestamps for the video, so feel free to skip to any particular section you want to, or just watch it all the way through. Let's get into it. There are 24 hours in a day, and you're recommended to get about 8 hours of sleep. You're at school for about 7 hours a day, therefore you can study 9 hours a day. But should you? So the first thing you need to understand is that more time to study doesn't mean you'll get better results or you will learn the topic a lot better. Spending more time on a subject may be a safer option, but I'm guessing you have other stuff to do. An example I found was that you can boil milk at low heat, or you can crank it all the way up. In both scenarios, you are getting boiled milk, however in one you're getting it a lot faster and more efficiently than the other. So figure out how to work smarter and not harder. So you probably know how long you can study before you get distracted, and use that knowledge to your advantage. So for me, I wake up in the morning quite early and get an hour's worth of work in, and in the morning I'm really productive, and I know that. So figure out when you can put in little bits of studying throughout the day so you can increase the amount of work done. I would say the most important thing about knowing how many hours you're studying per day is actually knowing how many subjects and pieces of information you're getting through per day. For example, I could spend an hour and a half writing up math notes about frequency polygons or Pythagoras theorem or circle theorems. Or I could just start doing some practice questions and get that work done a lot quicker and increase my understanding of the subject. There's just not much point in writing down 1 hour worth of chemistry work on your timetable. You should be writing down something like covers chapters 3 and 4 on your timetable. So for me, I had some exams coming up, and what I did is I wrote all those things into my Google Keep as like a little to-do list, and then I put those into Google Calendar and wrote down the subjects I want to cover in that day. I roughly have an idea of how long each subject will take to cover, so I can use that to my advantage and see how many hours I wanted to do that day. But I never ever put down 1 hour worth of chemistry. I always knew what subtopic I wanted to do to be able to have covered all the content by the time I have my exams in 2 weeks. So how many hours should you study per day? Again, I hate that I have to say this, and you probably want to click on this video to get a definite answer that you must revise this many hours per day, but it just ain't like that, I'm sorry. It's not an easy fix. You first of all have to know how many subjects you want to cover per day. However, a good base for how many hours you should be studying is probably maybe 2 hours, I guess. 2 to 3 hours, depending on what year group you're in, when is exam season, because that has a massive effect. Like, I don't study as much if I don't have any exams in the next 2-3 weeks. Obviously, when I have exams coming up, I will study a lot more. So if you want to know how you're covering topics and when you're covering topics, make sure to check out my video all about the retrospective revision timetable, as that's how I figure out what I'm going to do the next day and what topics I'm going to cover. So now let's move on to how many hours do I study per day. Again, I know you don't want to hear this, but it varies on the day. However, usually I'll put a base of about 2 to 5 hours per day. And there's quite a big range, as you can see, because it can vary like I just said. But again, I wake up in the morning, I do an hour worth of Anki, so I already have an hour's worth of revision covered, and I've gone through a lot of my subject because my Anki flashcards cover most of my subjects. Then when I get home, I do a little bit of work. The work I do at home depends on what day it is and if I have exams coming up. For example, last week on Monday, I revised like 5 hours. This is because I had a lot of time and I have a test coming up, so I want to get a lot of subjects done and a lot of work. Now that sounds like a lot, however, I didn't do that every day for the rest of that week. Some days I did 2 hours, another day I did 3 hours, maybe on another day I even did 5 hours again. But it just varies. Varies mainly on how many topics I want to cover that. And when it comes to weekends, I have a lot more time. For example, this weekend I'm filming a productive study with me video, and next week I have a couple of exams, which I keep on saying in this video. I'm sorry I keep on saying this, but I do. And I wanted to get a lot of work done. Figure out a base for you and then try and stick with that consistently. The only reason I'm able to get up in the morning early and do my Anki flashcard is because I've been doing that every single day for like 3 weeks now, which is why I'm just used to it every single day. Weekends, Mondays, Tuesdays, no matter how I'm feeling, I wake up in the morning and I do my Anki flashcard. If you're getting home every single day at, I don't know, 3 and start revising at 4, your body's going to be used to that. And then you can get work done and get a fair amount of subject covered, or get a little bit of hours done for each subject. Now, moving on to my last point, do hours even matter? No, they just don't. I know you may see all these study YouTubers, including me, putting 12-hour-long study, 8-hour-long study, 6-hour-long study with me in their title. However, you don't need to do that, because if you're working more efficiently, then you can do things in a less amount of time. And if your friends are saying how they revise 6 hours, it doesn't matter, because you could get the same amount of work done in 3 hours or even 2 hours if you're being really efficient and using active recall and other great methods of studying. So mostly study YouTubers put these things in their title for people to click on them. However, yeah, you can also study 8 hours. This doesn't mean you're not allowed to study for long lengths of time. You can study 8 hours, because in the 8 hours I was doing, I was being quite productive, making flashcards, running through Seneca practice questions and stuff like that. It just needs to vary. However, you can't be like, okay, I'm gonna do half an hour, because half an hour is not a lot of time, and I don't think you'll be able to cover all you want in half an hour. So find out how long it takes you to maybe run through one chapter or run through one section, and then work that out for how many subjects you want to do. Usually I figure out the subject I'm going to be revising that night by just looking at my timetable, seeing what subject I did that day at school, and then running through what I did in school and revising the subject I covered. Another thing that will help you get a lot of hours done is just making it enjoyable for you and challenging yourself, because if you're just being passive and writing notes on the textbook and rewriting the textbook in shorter form, that's not going to be very fun. However, if you're testing yourself and doing Anki questions, I know I push Anki way too much, but I just love it so much, or if you're just doing practice questions, then it's fun to like challenge yourself and see what you can get. Revision also dependent on many factors. For example, leisure. If you're putting off going to football or going out for a run or going to a family event or working or whatever, that shouldn't happen all the time. You should be able to do the things you enjoy as well as revise. And this relies on effective time management, which I've also made a video about if you want to check that out. So in conclusion, if you take away one thing from this video is hours don't really matter. It matters on how many subjects you're covering. If you're working for a short amount of time but getting still the same amount of work done, that's really good, because you're working efficiently, you're working smarter and not harder. Don't not watch 8-hour-long study with me because you don't do 8 hours. The point are they motivate you and stuff like that. Don't worry about what your friends are doing. Do what works for you. Don't just copy what other people around you are doing. If you enjoyed this video all about studying and how many hours you should do, don't forget to check out this video all about my Notion planner, which I use to figure out the topics I'm going to be doing for the day and even the week. Don't forget to subscribe and have a productive week. I'm glad I finished this video. Now I have to edit all the cuts of me messing up.